Hey everyone, today I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Sal Polisi. He was a heavily involved associate of the Colombo Crime Family. Sal was very close and committed crimes with John Gotti, Gene Gotti, Jimmy Burke, Henry Hill, Angelo Ruggiano, and many other mobsters. He also talks about having a beef with Fat Andy Ruggiano. During Sal's criminal career, he did a lot of heists with all 5 of the New York crime families. Sal refers to it as the 5 family heists, and he was the first mobster to become an informant and testify against John Gotti. Another thing me and Sal talk about is Sammy the Bull becoming an informant and what kind of impact it had on the mafia. A lot of us listen to Sammy the Bull, Michael Franzese, Mikey Scars. Well, Sal's got a hell of a story too. Sal was around that era as well. Sal said this was his last interview, so please enjoy every minute that he's talking. I know things change sometimes. As of now, he said he ain't doing no more interviews, so thanks again for everybody for watching. Please hit subscribe to my channel if you want to get more interviews like this. And without further ado, let's get into Sal's story. So, the way we can start this interview today is, we can talk about your early life and how you eventually got into the mob, because I know your father and your uncle were, they were bootleggers for Joe Profaci, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. So kind of expand on that.
So growing up in Brooklyn in the 50s, Italians were very tightly knit. And where I grew up, it's interesting that they now have a show called East New York. It's a television show. And that's where the Italians from my generation in the 50s were based, okay? And also not just the Italians. There was a few blocks away, there was a Jewish community that were deeply entrenched in crime, like way back to what they call Murder Incorporated. So there was always a distinction between, let's say, the Italians and the Jewish. They worked together, okay? Unfortunately, for most of the other groups, what they didn't know, the Italians were very prejudiced against other ethnic and cultural groups. Not advertised. They didn't appear to be bigots or prejudicial, but they were. What they did was they acted it out. If they found black guys to make money with it, they'd make money with them. Puerto Ricans with them, Jewish with them. And this was long before Albanians came to the country. This was like old-fashioned America in the 50s and 60s. So that's the neighborhood I grew up in, East New York, Brooklyn.
Okay. So when you were growing up, I mean, when did you kind of realize all this stuff was going on, that, this was, not a legit life and there was more or less all crime around you?
Well, my uncle would take me. First of all, my mother abandoned me when I was 2. So I had to go off with aunts and uncles. So my uncle would take me around the neighborhood. He'd take me to crap games, much like the movie that Chaz Palminteri did.
Bronx Tale.
Which one?
Bronx Tale.
Bronx Tale. Yeah, the kid was handling the dice, and I grew up doing that kind of stuff. That's what we did as little kids, 6 or 8 or 10. So by the time my uncle was like deeply entrenched, with the mob, with certain business that he had going on, and it was always gambling, because gambling was so illegal. When I think about today, it's amazing. Gambling's not illegal. You can do all kinds of illegal gambling, and drugs you can get anywhere, and there was a time in the 50s where there was no lotto. So the Italian mob ran the lotto, the sports gambling, all this kind of stuff that's sort of legal today. Marijuana, oh my God, that was totally illegal in those days. So there was always an opportunity to make money for the mob with vice. And then, of course, during the 60s, it began to change a little bit. I mean, in New York City, the mob had a base for gambling, like, horses, sports. There was plenty of gambling going on. And it was so illegal, you'd be arrested for carrying a little piece of newspaper as a gambling paraphernalia. I got arrested 30 times for gambling. You get arrested, go in, get a little bond, go back 3 weeks later, pay a $50 fine. It was a joke. It was like a tax.
Oh, gee.
And then you paid off the cops in New York. That's the way that worked.
Damn.
So the beginning, I was involved in gambling with my uncle. And then later on, he actually got arrested with Michael Franzese's father, Sonny Franzese.
Oh, shit.
If you read the book, and he went to jail for bank robbery.
Yeah.
That was like when I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and he didn't get as much time as Sonny, right? If I remember
No,
right. Yeah.
no, he didn't get as much time. No, they
Okay.
made Sonny the bad guy. But
Yeah.
at 19 or 20 years old, I thought bank robbery was the sweetest thing since sliced bread. So by the time I was, say, 26, I went out and robbed my first bank.
26 years old.
Yeah, that was the year before I met John Gotti. That was 1970, 71.
Okay.
And
So
then,
I was gonna say, so robbing a bank back then was a lot different from today. As we talked, me and you on the phone. So I mean, what drew you to rob a bank?
well, I had a mentor, Dominick Cataldo, and one of his Irish partners. They did a bank robbery in 48 seconds.
That quick?
Yeah, that quick. So I said, okay, I'm going to try this. So I got a hold of two guys that were seasoned bank robbers. They had just been released from federal prison. Actually, they were actually on the island of Alcatraz for being bank robbers, and they were much older than me. And the only thing was they were seasoned bank robbers, but I was athletic and I could jump over the counter. They couldn't jump over the counter. As it was in the book, the two of them, one guy had diverticulitis, the other guy had colitis, if you read the book,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so they taught me how to rob the bank. And after I did a couple of banks with them, I moved ahead to somebody young who could also jump over the counter. I mean, you didn't have to be an Olympic athlete, but you could jump right over these low counters. There was no cameras, no guards there, and nothing but money in 1970, 71. Loaded
Yeah.
with money. Of course, I did a little counter espionage and research and found out in those early days the banks were connecting a wire to the last bill in the drawer. So I'd look in the drawer and not take the last bill out, otherwise it'd set the alarm off.
Really?
Yeah, that was high tech for the bank security in 1970.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that's a totally different time, man. Like you
Yeah,
said, it's 50
yeah,
years ago. So that I mean,
yeah.
now they got cameras and everything everywhere, motion censored shit. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, they died the money. But you know what? If we robbed 50,000, first bank I robbed was 25,000. You could buy a new car for 3,500.
geez, yeah.
25,000 was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
And then we graduated to 50,000, 75,000, which was still, you could buy a house in New York City for 75,000 in 1971.
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of just kept, doing the robberies for a little while.
Yeah.
And then did you eventually go on? You did hijackings? Was this
Oh, well, the thing was in 1970, I was working with these old fashioned bank robbers who were at Alcatraz, and it's in the book. Then in 71, in late 71, I got shot in the back by a cop.
Yeah.
And then had a rest for a while and opened the Sinatra Club with Cataldo, Dominick Cataldo, who was a hitman for the Colombos. Opened that little Sinatra Club. And a few months later, John Gotti get out of jail. He came to the club. But we had a whole population of mobsters at the club, our own little group. Jimmy Burke, Tommy DeSimone. Let's see who. Henry came there, but he went to jail. All these guys all went to jail, back and forth. They go to jail and come out. But in those days, you got 5 years, and that was it. You come out in 20 months. None of the Italians were actually getting 20, 30 years for drugs. Right around the 70s, that changed. And a lot of guys got into the drug biz because there was so much money involved. But the Sinatra Club ran for a few years. And we got the permission from the bosses to melt together, to blend together. We weren't supposed to work with other families in those days. And that's when I connected with Foxy Jerothe and Tommy DeSimone. We became crime partners.
And what I was gonna say, so what, after you formed that relationship with these two guys, what kind of crimes were you guys doing?
Oh, just hijackings, jewelry robberies. We didn't really do too many burglaries. We didn't do too much of that stuff, Mostly high concept, quick hijackings, bank robberies like that. Occasionally, we'd get information. In those days, the Jewish community ran the Diamond District in New York. And a lot of those guys were pretty corrupt, and they had insurance, so they would set up a phony robbery. We'd go do a phony robbery, we'd get paid, we'd get diamonds, and they would claim that $1 million worth of diamonds were robbed, yet maybe it was like 100,000, So,
So
it was always always a scheme, you know.
So in one of these hijackings, I think you in your book you mentioned robbing Carl Gambino's son Thomas Gambino's shipment. Wasn't it?
No, I didn't really mention that, but we were warned not to take certain trucks that
Okay.
the Gambinos managed. They managed trucking companies.
Oh, okay. And Thomas Gambino had quite a few
Yeah,
of those that he ran for his father at the time.
yeah.
And so, what I wanted to bring up now was, the Sinatra Club. What really gave you the idea to want to make this club?
Well, I used to go to John Gotti's Bergen Club in Ozone Park, the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club,
Yeah.
and it was kind of sleazy looking. It was dirty, and they didn't have any match furniture. So I went in there with Dominick Cataldo one day, and I said, we should open up a club. And I had been recovering from a bullet wound. The cop shot me. I was driving a fancy car, and I threatened him with the car, and he shot me. So I had to lay low for a couple of months. And I went and rented a little storefront, and I fixed it up nicely, and it became a club to gamble. We didn't, initially decide to call it anything, but I had this friend that was a good burglar, and I said to him, "Hey, go to some bar, like go to a Polish bar, and break in and steal the jukebox." So about a week later, 4 or 5 days later, he calls me. Hey, he goes, "Ubats." That was my nickname for being crazy, Ubats. "I got the jukebox." I go, "Where is it?" He said, "I got it in the truck." "Okay, bring it over to the club," because the club didn't have a name. He rolled it in there, and all he was interested in was breaking the side and getting all the quarters out. He's a funny guy. So then I opened it up. We got it working. And I looked. There was all Polish music in there, like Bobby Vinton and the Polish rock and rollers and all. So I took all the records out, and I sent that same guy. I said, "Hey, go up the street there and get some Sinatra records, just Sinatra." We stuck the records in. We had a bunch of red quarters. Anybody would put the quarters in, reach down where the box was for the quarters, get your quarters back, and play some music. Then one night, a woman called looking for her son. And he went to the phone. He goes, "Mom, what are you bothering me for? What are you bothering me?" So she must have said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm in a little club." She goes, "What club?" "It's like the Sinatra Club." That's how it got the name.
Damn, just like that. No, I mean it's kind of meant to be. I mean, at that point, you gotta. I mean, yeah, that's what because at the other, and your other option you kind of weighed in was the, what was it, DB Cooper?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was the week we opened up the Sinatra Club, which was Thanksgiving, 1971, and we were all rooting that they would never catch DB Cooper, and everybody followed the story. It became legend. I will tell you later on when we get to prison. I'll tell you a little story about who we thought DB Cooper was. But when we get down the road,
okay,
after all the hijackings and after all the the stuff with Foxy and Tommy and
yeah, that's what I was going to kind of get into next was in the movie and the book, you talk about the five family heist, so what was that? And for the people that haven't read the book, like what was it all about? And how were you able to form this? And who were the five men that participated in the heist?
Well, there was a time when I would get stolen gold, stolen jewelry, and I would take some of this stuff to this coin dealer in New York, a famous coin dealer, and he was on 55th Street. And I said, I could have went to your competitor. He said, "No, my competitor, he would rip you off." I go, "What does he specialize in?" He specializes in buying coins all over the United States, and you have a whole truckload delivered every Monday or Tuesday. I go, "Really?" So Foxy and I decided, well, let's watch this coin dealer on 57th Street. So we watched and watched. Finally, around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, along came this big truck, and we see them struggling with these paint cans, bringing them into the coin store. And so I waited a little while. I'll say, I'll go in there and look around. Well, lo and behold, we found out this guy was one of the biggest buyers in New York for silver coins. And that year, in 1973, silver had taken this meteoric, it took this amazing jump in price, like from $2 an ounce to $4. So we decided to rob this truck. So we had to follow it back to the airport. And we followed it back to the airport. And then, I decided we'll put together a team of 5 guys. Well, 4 guys, really. And then we'll use the guy, to just drive the truck afterwards. So we got together with Tommy and myself and Foxy. Gene Gotti was supposed to go with us, but he decided not to go. And then we had another guy. So we had 4 guys from different families. And the 5th guy was, hanging out in a building where we could drive the truck and unload it. And that at that time, Jimmy Burke had rented this building, and all stolen, hijacked merchandise would go to this building, and then he would buy it. He would broker it. He had all the connections with the Jewish buyers in New York for garments and men's clothes, you name it. So we did that heist, and instead of selling it like to one buyer, I decided to put on record. That means to let everybody know we were dividing the merchandise. And that's what we did. We divided up the coins. Well, later on, maybe a month or so later, I had all my coins left because I didn't need to sell them. And Foxy and Tommy was giving them to Jimmy Burke, and Foxy was giving it to John Gotti. They were getting ripped off. They were getting, like, say, a bag of coins was $1,000 face value. And they were getting, like, say, maybe $4,000, and I was getting $6,000. So I started buying their coins and selling them to my coin dealer. So that's the first time I did like trading of like large volume stolen merchandise. But they were U.S. coins, which were 90% silver if it was pre-64, and the whole truckload was pre-64.
Damn. So that's the heist right there. I mean,
yeah,
you never really hear about all the families working together to go and do something like that, or that I've never really heard of. All 5 of the New York crime families. I mean, didn't you have to go through a process to make that happen?
Yeah, we had to go. We had to go to like I was involved with the Colombos. Joe Brancato was the boss then after Colombo got shot, and Foxy had to go to Gotti, and Gotti had to take him to the Faticos, and then Tommy had to go to Jimmy Burke, and Jimmy Burke got permission from Paulie Vario. So that's the way that all worked out. And it did work out well. And everybody was satisfied that some of the guys from different families could work together without killing each other, because the mob war at that time in the early 70s was still on. It was always the Colombos causing all the mob tensions, just like you saw in the Godfather, making of the Godfather movie, The Offer, if you watch that.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go ahead.
But it all worked out. That was one of the early heists we did. We did other ones, really did a lot of research on, what we could steal and how much we could get it for, and, get for the merchandise. Most of the time, guys didn't do that research, but I was more focused on, okay, I want to try to sell this before I steal it. And right. the Jewish guy that taught me about gold and all, which I still buy today. I buy gold and silver. I put ads on Craigslist. I'm still buying that stuff. I buy it discounted. I'm always buying it discounted. I buy it legally, Yeah. In 2 years, I must have bought $50,000 worth of gold. Well, I probably paid, $10,000 for it.
Damn.
And then I take it to New York City, and I sell it for cash, right over the counter.
It's all legal now. I guess legal. When you don't steal it. Right. Yeah. But no, I mean, so that was just one of many heists that you did with the 5 families then?
Yeah, many of them, sure. Jimmy Burke was great. I think Scorsese didn't portray who Jimmy Burke really was, the De Niro character, because he was really a streetwise guy. He was. I mean, he was one of the smart guys you'd ever want to meet in the street. He just had answers for any crime. I mean, he knew how to liquidate anything. Jimmy was great.
Yeah. So, what was your relationship with John Gotti? Because, I mean, you met him at an early age, right?
Yeah, I met him in 1972, February, when he came out of prison. from his first federal sentence that he did. I was sort of in a unique position because I had to answer to Dominick Cataldo, who was a hitman for the Colombos. But Gotti respected him, and Cataldo respected Gotti. They knew that he was moving quickly. So I didn't have to answer to John, but I got a good pass. I could do anything with Foxy that we wanted to do. Foxy would have to go up there and tell him what he was doing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, and who you're doing with it. They want to know everything that was going on. They didn't like, mob guys didn't like bank robbers.
How come?
I'll give you the answer. Because when you got the money, you didn't have to sell anything. Whereas if you did a hijack of a truck or jewelry or something, you had to sell that. Well, once you sold it through the mob, they made money on you.
Yeah.
I wasn't selling any of the money I robbed from a bank. That was ridiculous.
No. So, eventually, he wanted to bring you in as a member in his family, right?
He did, yeah. But Cataldo wouldn't allow that. I mean, yeah. Sammy, I didn't know Sammy, but he switched families.
Oh, did he? What was he originally?
Colombo.
Oh, really?
Damn. Yeah. Now, you could be involved with the Colombos and Queens and never know anybody who's in the Bronx in those days.
Wow.
You didn't talk about it. It was very secretive. So eventually you might find out a guy was a wise guy, But in those days, a guy like Gotti got to know everybody around the city. But in the early 70s, you didn't know who was who. No. You just didn't know. Yeah.
So, when eventually he became boss and stuff, and he really didn't, at first he didn't really want to be involved with the drugs, is what I kind of got from your book.
Yeah, he wasn't interested in the drugs, but his brother Gene was.
And
Gene Gotti was selling drugs. Yeah, sure.
That's what kind of pushed him towards it then.
Well, I don't think he ever was involved in it. He just got a piece of the action.
Oh, just like a kick up then?
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, by the time I left in 84, 85, things had already changed. I mean, the drug business it continued. I mean, and I don't know what Sammy did. I think he was involved in unions. I never talked with Sammy in my life. Other guys I met, but not Sammy.
So another question I can ask is, you were around for 2 Colombo Wars, is that right?
Right.
So what was it like during that time for you?
I just didn't participate in what they were doing. For some reason, I got called in to kill somebody. It didn't happen. And then my entire life in and around the mob for 19 years, I never killed anybody. First of all, I didn't believe in it. And that was a sign in itself. And then second of all, it just didn't happen. I mean, it never happened. I mean, I was ordered to go dig a grave. I did that. But that guy wasn't killed until months later. I had to go back and fill the grave up.
Damn.
I mean, so.
Oh, yeah. So another one, let's see, what else do I got? Who was Carlo Gambino to you?
I never met him. There was always people in between. He was like a legendary figure, okay? And the guys that, we did meet were captains, like below Gambino. And later on, when I went to prison, I became real friendly with a guy who was a captain. It was like a father, a guy named Ike Vetti. And so he had an influence on me and told me to get out of that life in the 70s after I went to prison.
He was a very quiet guy. Not a lot of people knew about him. There's not much history about him either.
No, he was a mystery. He was a real enigma, Dave. Yeah. But he was a high class. He was a classy guy. He was involved with Sinatra, all kinds of things. And so when I met him in prison. And the funny thing was, at the end of my prison stay, they had just opened up the MCC in New York, who had no bars. It had windows and doors. And in that, on the 7th floor, in the summer of 75, Dave Icavetti and I were pinochle partners. And we played against Jimmy Burke and Tommy DeSimone after DeSimone had killed my partner, Foxy Jerothe. And we would play for push-ups. And Dave was in his 50s then, so I did the push-ups if we lost. And then we didn't lose much because Tommy wasn't a good pinochle player. He was very bad. But Jimmy was he was the best card player I ever met. He was a
Yeah.
great card player.
Yeah, and, you know, in your book, you know, you talk about a lot of the guys that came into the Sinatra Club, and you know, a lot of them, you know, being bad gamblers, but you know, they still kept coming back. Like, you know, like Gotti, you know, he said he's a pretty bad gambler. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, he was, you know, he was an egotistical guy, a narcissist, but he had habits, and I picked up on his tell. I wrote in the book that when he had a good hand, he'd push up the cigar and he would
That's how you
elevate
know.
the cigar and chew on it. And then when he had a bad hand, the cigar would go down. So I knew when to bluff him, but I never told him.
Oh man. So you
Yeah.
made a lot of different people in that club. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
during that mob war that was going on during the time, you know, I mean, you said all these guys would come together and, you know, still meet in that club, even though all
Right.
these families were at war with each other.
Yeah.
So
No guns allowed there. Nothing like that. And we never had a beef. There was never an argument. It was really cool. All they wanted to do was gamble. And there was nowhere to gamble in those days. So if you opened up, you know, a little club, and also the Italian clubs, they would leave their door open and guys could walk in and out.
yeah.
You might go in and make a bet, but there was no like all night game. If you were going to go to an all night crap game, they would locate that in like a warehouse, and it would only be used for one night, and they'd move to another place.
Yeah.
But we
Just to
didn't
keep
do
it
that.
from
Yeah.
getting busted from the cops.
Yeah, we
Right.
didn't do that. I had catered food came in. I had, you know, good wine. Then I had a few girls up the block. So we always had something going on, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was definitely more. It was like more of a kind of like a secretive club, though. I mean, it wasn't nothing
Right.
that you guys promoted. Hey, there's a sign on the building, Sinatra Club. Come on in. You know, it
Right.
was just for strictly for the mob guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when did it come to an end? The Sinatra Club,
In mid '74, I went to jail,
right?
and I gave the keys to a guy. He closed it up, and everybody stopped going there because, you know, basically I had a draw. I knew all these guys, and they would come, and it closed up. It had 3 years, and that was it.
Yeah, and when you were going to prison, I mean, you had it was you were facing prison time, if I'm right, and you know, you kind of I can't remember what you were being charged with, you know, but
Bank
bank
robbery.
robbery. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were able to get out of it. And there was kind of break that down how you were able to get out of it.
Well, I had a medical record from the Marine Corps, and said I was a schizophrenic, you know. So we used that as a defense, and I had this unknown lawyer in the '70s who later in the '90s or '80s or '90s became John Gotti's lawyer, a guy named Jerry Shargell. He recently died, but he was a brilliant attorney, and he wrote an appeal, and I won the case, so I got out. I only did 13 months. So.
Yeah.
But I met a lot of good guys in prison, mostly drug dealers. And at the time I was in Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, I got to tell you, a guy named Fat Gigi, Louis Inglis, he was the subject of that movie that Chaz did, Bronx Tale.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there. Henry was there from Goodfellas. I was there later from Sinatra Club. Frank Lucas was there from American Gangster. All these guys were in Lewisburg, and they later, 20 years later, had movies done about them.
See, that's something, man. You just never know who you meet or who you're around, and you know, especially in prison. I mean, they went from that to having movies about them. I mean, especially you too. So you never know what's going to happen in life. I mean,
another guy was the guy from Dog Day Afternoon. He was there. But the Italians didn't associate with him because he was gay.
Oh, so they had their rules they stuck to.
Yeah. They like Lucas, though. They like Frank Lucas. Oh, and speaking of Lewisburg, there was a guy there who was fascinating. He'd be out on the track every day running. And he was a former Green Beret guy. And he escaped from Lewisburg and later went to North Carolina. The FBI killed him. They think he was the real D.B. Cooper.
Really?
If you look up with a guy named McCoy, look him up and read about Richard McCoy, and he was a Green Beret guy, and they think he was the real DB Cooper. So he jumped out of a plane with money also.
Damn. So I mean, so it was never really revealed on who DB Cooper was then.
No, never. But, I mean, he was part of the theory of who D.B. Cooper was, but I don't know if he was or he wasn't. But he didn't associate with anybody. He'd be out on the prison track running with boots on, like army boots,
plotting his next escape.
Yeah. He was the only guy who ever escaped from Lewisburg, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, read about him. Richard McCoy.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look him up.
And he escaped 2 days after Nixon resigned. We had a TV room, and all the Italians were in there laughing about Richard Nixon because maybe a week or two before he stood up before the whole United States population and said, "I am not a crook." That's what he said.
Yeah. And
so all the Italians would walk around laughing, like similar to Spartacus. You know, I'm Spartacus. We would say, "I'm not a crook." No, I'm not a crook. That was the joke for the year, you know, about Richard Nixon. Everybody knew he was corrupt. You know?
Yeah, and then he eventually stepped down.
Yeah.
So, you know, one more criminal act I wanted to bring up was the French Connection, right? I mean, what was your take on that? Because I mean, you eventually had an encounter with it.
Oh yeah, Cataldo had the connections with from the inside where the drugs was seized, and they kept it in a storage locker. And in those days, again, no cameras, you know, no security. A cop would walk up and show a badge, say, "I got to go get the evidence locker 122963 or whatever." So they had this phony cop go in there with a phony badge and take out the heroin. And then he said, "I'll bring it back after the court appearance." They take the heroin out, put flour in, and put the flour back into the evidence locker. And Cataldo would get his hands on it and would sell it. So
damn.
We were selling the French Connection heroin.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really big case that, you know, went on back then. And for you to go in there and, you know, take it out, I mean, that's something, man, to be able to go and do that. But
yeah,
you know, so, you know, kind of moving on, you know, to your life. Hold on, my bad. You know, eventually you became a government witness, you know, so what was that like, you know, and what led up to that?
Well, honestly, my sons were getting to be teenagers. They were like 14, 15 years old, and I got busted for selling cocaine. And I had paid off a judge in the county in Queens, New York, a couple of times. And I knew that, you know, I could pay off and get out of that case. And I figured, well, what a great bargaining chip. I'll go to the feds and tell them, look, I had this corrupt judge for years, and I'll set him up on my own case, pay him off, and then you guys can give me the program. And that they went for it, even though they thought no one could ever do that. I did pull it off because it was a judge that was known for taking bribes, even to help John Gotti's younger brother. Vincent Gotti had a case there, and Cataldo and I fixed that case for him.
Damn.
Eventually, I did the case, all the details in there, and then I got put into the program. What I didn't realize, though, was I had signed up to do that investigation for the FBI. What I didn't realize is like looking at a credit card app, a little fine print, you know? And when I signed the agreement with the government, it said I would appear for the next 20 years and testify on any criminal case that they thought I would be valuable for. So a couple of years after I did the judge's case, then the feds called and said, hey, we want to talk to you about your old friend John Gotti. So they whisked me off to a place in Iowa, and I sat down for 2 days talking to this woman who was the first prosecutor. Her name was Diane Jackalone. She was a bit naive and gullible. She didn't realize the attorneys that Gotti had, hired to defend him. And in that case, I got the idea he was paying somebody off. So I told the government, they laughed at me. That was 86. So he gets acquitted, comes out, becomes a New York, mafia superstar. Everybody loved Gotti because he would sign whiskey bottles, champagne bottles. Everybody liked him. He was a likable gangster. And then it took them 5-6 years. And finally, when Sammy flipped, he told him about the payoff on the first case that I was involved in, and he, you know, gave me the information how Gotti did that.
Yeah. So little did they know that you were right about the whole time. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the whole fix back in '86 was in, but they didn't convict him till '92.
Huh. So you had to go into court, you know, for how long? Like a month or so, wasn't it?
Oh, it was about a month in 1986. Yeah.
So each day you had to go in there and go on the stand and just kind of talk about different stuff.
Talk about your life inside organized crime, you know. But I really didn't have a lot to do with John Gotti. I was always involved with the Colombos. Yeah. But occasionally we crossed paths, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, when was he in there for any of this? Wasn't he? One time he was, right?
Who?
John Gotti, when you were testifying against him?
Oh yeah, he sat there the whole trial.
Oh, and the whole month you were there?
Oh yeah. Damn. He was on trial. He actually was on trial from, I want to say, September of '86 to Friday the 13th, 1987. Damn. He got acquitted that day. So it was kind of interesting, and I was hiding out in Texas, and you know, I was just trying to move ahead with my life, and by that time I had started to do different things, you know, legitimate things. I mean, really stayed away from crime, never talked to a criminal, never saw a gun. Once I went to Texas, I had a new name, a new life, and I had a wife then. We stayed together a few years, and then I split with her. About 5 years later, I got with another woman, had 2 kids in the 90s. Worked in Hollywood, met some really cool people in Hollywood, you know. I was considered the real Chili Palmer. Do you remember the movie that Travolta did?
Kind of. What was that one?
He was a mob guy who went to Hollywood.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the mob ones because I remember you telling me about the Blue Haven one too, right?
Yeah, funny stuff. Yeah.
I remember like a lot of them. I mean, they made so many, you know, but you know, so after that, you wrote your book and you got the movie going for you. And after that, I mean, you know, like you said, all this stuff you talked about has been 50 years ago, you know, so after that, your life of crime, I mean, you just really stayed out of it and kind of stayed on the positive side now, right?
There was no crime after 1986, actually after 1984. So now it's 29, 39, 40 years, no crime. 40 years.
How's it feel?
It's good. I don't think about it. I laugh about it. Boy, I wasn't very smart, you know, thinking back. But you didn't have to be very smart in those days. You know, you could steal a car with a piece of wire. I mean, you know. I mean, over the years, I had a lot of laughs. One time I went to a football game in Texas, and the woman was out there frantic. She locked her keys in the car, and there was nobody out there. And I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "I locked my keys." I go, "Just a minute." I went in my pickup truck, a little piece of wire, to open the door for her. I said, "See, it's not that easy. You come from New York. Do all New Yorkers have the ability to steal cars?" I go, "No, I just used to watch a lot of movies." I said.
Yeah. So how long were you in hiding then?
Oh, I don't know, maybe till Gotti died. And then it all changed anyway. Nobody was interested. They'd have to go out and kill hundreds of people. So many people flipped and went to the other side, you know, really.
Yeah, I mean, that really eventually that's what it led to. And, you know, so after that kind of just, after he passed, you know, you weren't really worried about someone. Because, I mean, you've seen Sammy flip and everything else. I mean, when you seen that, I mean, because you were already gone. I mean, what did you think about that?
Well, I just think I started to feel the transition that the old mob, they weren't interested in loyalty, camaraderie. That was out the window. It was all about greed. It really was the same 30 years earlier, but they hid their intentions. Their agenda was to make money. So it was always the same. They just good actors.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. And, you know, eventually it all came to an end. And, you know, what do you think the mob does today? I mean,
I have no clue. I don't know. I mean, when I think back, well, they can't have, they specialize in illegal activities. So gambling's not illegal. Lotto is not illegal. So they must have to find something else to do. I mean,
Yeah, I would think a lot of it's probably like scams, like with the investing money and shit into
Eh,
stocks and stuff. I mean, that's
pump and dump. Yeah,
yeah,
pump and
that
dump.
because
Yeah,
more on
I'm
the
sure
financial
there's
side.
some old timers that try to do the same thing they did, in the past,
Yeah,
but it's just all different, I'm sure. I was telling my wife, today I read a little news brief saying the government is trying to pass a law where every car would have a kill switch.
really.
So you're driving along and they shut your car off.
Yeah. So if people don't want to pull over, then they just shut
Yeah.
it off.
So there goes the professional car theft ring is over. I mean, so they found a way to make it difficult. They make things difficult. They do.
Yeah,
But I'm sure I'm not involved in a computer crime. I think that's not so difficult.
yeah. No, I mean it's all different, like you said, and the government, the FBI is always going to get smarter and smarter. So it's
Right.
just better to try and live a legit life instead of going
Yeah,
through all
of
this stuff.
course, of course.
You
There's
know.
plenty of ways to make money. You just got to be creative. I mean, even after I left the life, I came up with ideas. I invented a toy once, and I made a lot of money.
What was it?
One little toy. It was a little stuffed animal. It was for the Y2K year, like 98, 99.
Yeah.
And I probably made $500,000 to $1 million in 1 month.
Holy shit.
Yeah, legally. So
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I did come up with great ideas, and those toys are still selling.
Damn. So, yeah. So see, I mean, there's so much. Who knows? If you didn't have that mafia element around you, who knows what, what kind of life you would have led. You would have led a pretty legit life. I would, think.
Right. Yeah.
It's just what you grow up and what's around you and what you think's okay when you grow up.
Yeah, I've always found ways, to make money. I'll give you an example. In I want to say 2002, right after 9/11, 2001, 2002, I had a vintage shop in San Francisco. Now, I had learned how to buy all kinds of collectibles. You name it, I bought it. I mean, I knew off the top of my head what every coin, even till today, American coins are worth, collectible, Hot Wheels, all this kind of stuff. And one day a guy came in and said, I have these German cars, little German cars, like, maybe like, say, 3-4 inches. They were wind-up cars. And I said, okay, how many you got? He said, whatever it was, 40. And I looked up on eBay and found that it was selling for like 50, 80, 90 bucks each. I go, okay. So I lined them up. Out of the 40 cars, it's like 4 of them had the key. I go, well, where's the key for the rest of these cars? He said, they're lost. Well, I'll only give you 20 bucks a car. He said, well, they're worth 80, 90. 20 bucks, that's it. So he took the 800,000 bucks. Then I started thinking about this key. So I went to research the key. Found out the key, if you could just find the key, you get $10 each key, $12 a key. Well, I had been making toys and stuff in China, so I had this connection, legitimate connection. I sent the keys over there, and the woman said, well, if you only make a couple of hundred keys, cost you $1. What about a couple thousand? Oh, you can get the price down to 12 cents. So I bought 8,000 keys for 12 cents.
Oh, shit.
I was selling them for $10 each.
Damn.
For years, okay?
Damn.
Finally, someone else spotted that I was doing it, and they figured they would sell some, but supply was available, so the price is down to $5 now. But I still got 5,000 or 10,000 keys left, and I still sell them.
Yeah, and see, it's just always having that. You always had the mindset. I mean, even so. I mean, but you used it in a criminal way before, but now you do it in the legit way. I mean, you always had it. So you think of these things, and I mean, think if you never joined that life. I mean, what?
Well, yeah, and the other thing was these little wheels. Everybody, you're 22, you played with little Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So about 20 years ago, they had these old cars that had the red line on them. And I found out if you could get any wheels, it'd be $2, $3, $4 per wheel. Well, then I made those. And I was selling them for like $1 each. They cost me 16 cents. So one day I went to speak in Burbank, California, to editorial class. They were learning how to edit movies. And these were people that had other jobs and wanted to be in the movie industry. And I went up there and I had a little bag like flour representing a heroin, okay? And I had these wheels in my hand. And I go, I'm going to show you how it takes forever to figure out, you know what? If you're thinking enough, you can always make money legally. See this bag of heroin? I used to get this stuff and make 4 or 5 times my money, but it was illegal, facing 20 years. Now you see these little wheels? I made them for 12 cents and I was getting almost $2, 15 times my money and legal. And they looked at me, they go, "Ooh, what made you think that?" I was sitting around all night thinking about how to make money. I had made hundreds of thousands of those wheels and sold them over the years. So I mean, there's always a way to find, a profitable idea. And it does not have to be illegal. I mean, look at that little story.
Yeah. No.
Matter of fact, I married my wife 7 years ago and I had about 150,000 wheels laying around. I go, let's sell these things. So I put them up on eBay and a guy from Denver came all the way over here to Arizona and bought every wheel off me. Because with inflation, the wheels have gone up.
So
yeah.
So yeah, it's just always. I mean, it's just different products.
Yeah, of course.
instead of the drugs, it's wheels or some shit. But
yeah, it doesn't have to be illegal to make money, and then you get very excited. Maybe you're not going to get rich, but you're going to make a living.
Yeah. And that's what you want instead of living a life in prison. You know what I mean? Or dead.
Yeah, who wants to do that? So I never really told the story about the wheels till today. I never told that story.
Damn. Was there other story that you were going to tell me at the beginning of this interview that you said you never shared?
Yeah, there was. I'll tell you. We made the Sinatra Club movie.
Uh-huh.
That took years and years to get the right people in place, to get that couple of million. But of course, $2 million is nothing. So that's a low budget movie. Okay. But several times I got close and I met groups of people that, I'd go to a party. One time I went to this party in 4th of July. It must have been like 15, 20 years ago. And this guy says, I gave this script to a well-known company. Maybe they'll call you. I said, okay. Maybe a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from a guy. He says, hey, when you coming down? You're up in the Bay Area. I go, yeah. When you coming to L.A., I'll be down there, like the 15th of the month. Well, come see us. A very famous company. Actually, it was Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter owned the company, Limelight Films. Damn. So I go down there and have lunch with these guys. He says, well, how much do you think you'll need for this Sinatra Club? This is a good 10 years before I did the movie. Probably 8 to 10 million, unless we can get some good stars. I said, I met a guy that was young some years ago. He loved the script, but we didn't have the money for him. But he wasn't even popular. I said, of course, today he's a superstar, a guy named Chris Pine.
Yeah, you had a lot of cool people in that.
Yeah.
That did, because you had, was it Joey Diaz in there? He was the comedian.
Yeah, Joey's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
I came apart in the movie.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Joey Lawrence. Joey Diaz, I went to one of his shows. He introduced me at the Ice House in L.A. or Pasadena, and we laughed our butts off. He's quick-witted. He's a quick-witted guy.
Dude, he's funny as shit. I love his podcast. He's like one of the guys that kind of inspired me to get into this.
I always call him everyone. I did his podcast years ago once. The Beauty of the Beast.
Damn.
Way back.
Look that one. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I was going to tell you. So I go meet this guy in L.A. He said, meet us at the Four Seasons Club. I go to the Four Seasons Hotel, high-dollar hotel. They buy a bottle of champagne. Anyway, these two guys says, look, you need a couple million. We got to wait for you to make a lot of money. I didn't know it, but he read my book about the drugs. He said, look, we can do this. If you can get us guys to give us money, we own a bank. I go, really? He says, we'll give you a percentage. You can make $100,000 a month. I go, really? Immediately, I knew it was money laundering. I said, well, let me think about it. So I drove from L.A. back to San Francisco. I called this FBI agent and told him what happened. He said, oh, my God, you're going to get another call. I get a call about a week later from the DEA in Washington, D.C. They said, Salvatore Polisi, we know your whole history. You gave 2 names of 2 people that you met it's a funny thing. We know a little bit about these two people. We're going to come from Washington to San Francisco to meet you. They fly out to San Francisco. They sit me down in the hotel and tell us exactly what happened. I give them a card. I go, here's this card from this guy. I can't think of his D. Baskerville was one name. So they said, thank you very much. Off they go. I never hear from them. That was like, God, that had to be 2004, 5, 6, something like that. About 2 years ago, somehow I stumbled on the story. Those two guys, with the information I gave, were arrested, convicted, and went to jail for 20 years. Operation Director's Cut. And I told Steve, my co-writer, and now he did some research. So in the next book, I mean, I was never going to get involved in crime, and I had to be careful. They wanted me involved in laundering. I'm not going to do it. Same with Henry, always had a scheme. Henry always had a scheme. So there's stuff, because you're a target, because people believe what they read. They go, oh, once a criminal, always a criminal. No, I was not going to do anything illegal ever again. And that's a story of whatever you call it, redemption, change, whatever you call it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's insane, because you did have the opportunity to do it and make, what was it, 100,000 every month? Damn.
I probably could have made more than that. You know, they were just laundry. Eventually, they got arrested, convicted for drug dealing, weapons. They were involved in weapons too, smuggling weapons. These two guys were bad dudes.
Damn. You didn't have to ever testify on them then?
No, I didn't have to do anything. I never even heard much about it until I stumbled on the case.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean that you never brought that story up before, so I'm glad you shared that with me. I mean, do you have any other stories that you wanted to share that you thought of?
There's lots. I just don't even want to think about it all. You'd always be careful once you're involved in crime. You just stay away from it. It's like, you know, you burn your finger. You know, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
I don't know what Anthony did, but Anthony was so inside. He was really inside because his father was a crazy.
Ruggiano, right?
Oh yeah.
Ruggiano, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, you didn't share on here, but what was your relationship with him?
Well, I didn't get along with Fat Andy because he didn't like Dominick Cataldo, because Cataldo was a Colombo. Nobody liked the Colombos way back. They caused a lot of grief.
So they just didn't get along at all then?
Oh, no. Actually, he came into one of my stores once, Fat Andy, with a gun, and I had to go tell John Gotti, if he ever comes to my store, I had 3 jewelry stores, with a gun, I'm going to shoot him, and tell him that. And he knew Gotti knew the whole story about my nephew being Fat Andy's grandson. So I never heard another word. Gotti went over there and he quelled that whole mess, because I never heard another word from Fat Andy.
So he was trying to shake you down for some money in those stores?
Oh yeah. He tried, yeah.
Damn.
Wouldn't go for it, you know?
So what about his son? I mean, you got along with him pretty well.
Oh, I liked Anthony and Albert. They were nice kids. They were much younger than me, and they were just nice kids. Anthony was always nice.
Yeah.
And so his nephew, I should say, yeah, Anthony's nephew is my nephew.
Really?
Yeah.
So you guys are related somehow?
Yeah.
No, I mean, you guys grew up in that area, so I'm not a big surprise.
Yeah. In that area and that era, you know, the era of the mob. So, but it's interesting. I'd be interested to know how many people listen to all this. You know, it's so old. I mean, to me, it's old, you know.
I think people will like it, man. I really do. And, you know, hopefully, you know, people will enjoy it. I know they will. I know they'll like it. And that's why I really wanted to get the whole redemption stuff in there too, because, you know, at the beginning, we talked about all the, you know, crimes and stuff, but, you know, I think it's important to put in the redemption story as well. Cause I mean, that's your message, that, you know, that's what I get from you, that you want to leave that.
Yeah. It was, you know, it was the life that's put in front of me. And I thought it was fantastic, like a rock and roll connection. You know, everybody looks up there on the stage. Oh, that's fantastic. It's beautiful. He's rich. He's famous. But it really wasn't. It was a life for losers. Eventually, it showed that way.
Yeah. You know, a lot of them died or in prison.
Yeah, a lot of them were murdered, too. A lot of guys were murdered. Their sons were murdered. It's terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, you always wanted to keep your family out of the life. You know, I remember reading from the book, and You know,
Yeah.
what did to the people that didn't read the book, what was, you know, what did John Gotti say to you about bringing his son in?
Well, he thought it was a great thing to do. I mean, you know, I remember reading that Vincent Giganti said, "What a disappointing thing. I'm sorry to hear that John Gotti Jr. was a made guy."
Damn.
They even the guys knew it wasn't a good life, you know. And both my kids went to college. They were football players. They got families. You know, they did very well. They never once used drugs or no, they never got arrested. None of that stuff. My kids have clean cut lives, and one of them's 50, 54. The other one just died, you know, last year. But that's the way it is. I mean, you know, it's a life of crime. Nothing beautiful about a life of crime. It's a joke. It's terrible.
No, I know, man. I've heard the stories, you know. But it's always nice to hear the redemption part of it, and you know, to really talk about. There's so much more out there there's so much more opportunity than there was back then, you know.
Yeah.
Because you know, the technology has empowered everyone to have a platform and you know do whatever the hell they want, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to brag about the crimes. I don't brag about some of them. Very funny, but it's not worth it. You know, I would like I said, to see some change in this country. It's terrible. You know, the conditions, the murder, the, you know, family abandonment. I mean, we got drugs. We got so many issues. It's not getting better, though. I don't know about for your age at 22 years old, what you look at. Okay, you got to stay away from everything.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I mean, it's true. You never know what to trust, and you always got to be paranoid about shit. But you know, I don't know. I mean, just take it day by day and just keep going, you know, and not try to increase those, you know, the bad stuff coming to us by, you know, being in the life of crime or whatever, you know what I mean? Because the world's already tough enough, you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, you know, you can check on me and.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming. Do you have anything you want to promote or your book and movie?
I think people, it doesn't matter. The book's always out there, Sinatra Club. But I don't know if I get a chance to do something else. I might talk about what are we doing in a country where we have all this murder. It really troubles me, you know, because the kids have been taught some strange things. I mean, you're the age group, 22, and these young people today, I don't know what they think. It puzzles me to think the mentality of the 20s. I got a grandson, 22, so you know he's got it together. You know, he's a biologist, but you guys have a tough life. I mean, because there's so much in front of you, so many.
There's so many distractions. There really is with you know, with the technology. Like I said, I mean, it empowers you to go talk to anyone in the entire world. You know what I mean? So it makes stuff so much easier.
My feeling is people should know that crime may seem funny and alluring and even adventurous, but in the long term, it's a dead end. That's it.
I mean, wow. What did you guys think of that interview? Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this video. Sal was around a lot of high-ranking mobsters back in the day, and on top of that, he was the first mobster that testified against John Gotti in trial. And he's still around to tell the story. Please share this interview with anyone that you think will enjoy it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, because I got plenty more interviews coming like this. If you want to support Sal and what he's got going on, I'll put his book link in the video description. Also, if you want to support me and my clothing brand, I got t-shirts, hoodies, beanies, and sweats, all on my website. I'll be sure to put it in the video link description below. Also, at the end of this video, I'll put a playlist of all my other Mafia interviews I've done. And the last thing that I'll bring up is I got my Mafia documentary series coming soon. I got 11 different episodes. Each episode is about a different crime family. It features many ex-mobsters, mob experts, and law enforcement. So I think everybody will enjoy it if you enjoyed this interview. Now, without further ado, check out this trailer. This life is very twisted. You never know when it's your time to go. One day you're putting in work with someone, and the next day they're taking you out.
In our days, it was very quiet. You know, nobody ever talked about this. You know, nobody glamorized it. It was all like hush hush.
Not a glamorous life. And again, it's not what you see in Goodfellas. It's not what you see in Casino. Some days you were dead broke. Some days you had $2,000 in your pocket. It wasn't every day. You know, you don't know anything else. You don't know what it is to go wake up 6 o'clock and go to work. Work? What the fuck is that? I wasn't going to work.
Even bosses get murdered in this life.
There was younger guys underneath him, and he wasn't doing the right thing, I guess. He was coming out of the card game, and unfortunately, a lone gunman came up and shot him 5 times.
People who knew me would tell you I like to use the bat a lot. If I had to shoot you, I'd shoot you too. I've done that.
This life requires many mixed personalities. You have to wear many hats in this life to try and survive.
You become 4 or 5 different people all at once. And you got to go home and be a dad and a husband. You got to go to work and do your job. You got to be out in the street and be a gangster.
Bonanno family is called Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno.
That life there is done. Today you have to be legitimate today.
Man, but you got to be an idiot to want to be a hooligan today. Jail time's now like 100 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, you'll be dead, in prison for life, or in the witness protection program.
I don't know anybody. Now, when the mafia turned their back on me, I know everybody.
There was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy The Bull Gravano.
Here he is, signing autographs in a restaurant on Mulberry Street. And we're supposed to be a secret organization.
He was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it.
Albert Anastasia, he was a Brooklyn guy. He was probably the biggest killer in the history of the mob.
Michael Franzese, his father, Sonny, was a really tough guy. But he really raised his son right.
If you want to see a gangster, that's Sonny Franzese. And John Sr. don't compliment anybody.
This is a documentary series about the American Mafia. It includes 11 different crime families. Each episode is about a different one. The crime families include the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchese, the Gallo Crew, Chicago Outfit, the Philadelphia Mafia, the Patriarca, the Trafficante crime family, and the Jewish Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel to watch each episode as they come out.